Diesel heaters. Well, why do you need one? There's a couple of main advantages compared to other heating solutions for fall drive and camping. Number one, it doesn't create condensation. See, like conventional propane heaters, they produce a lot of condensation. So you wake up in the middle of the night and the inside of your tent is pretty wet, or the inside of your vehicle, all the glasses are all wet, which is not what you want when you went to camping. Number two is safety. These units are much safer than your conventional propane units. Propane produces obviously heat, it's more of radiant heat, and it is inside your tent. So the moment something touches the surface of it, like any cloth or your sleeping bags or anything like that, it can catch fire. Whereas this one is more of a heat exchanger, and it's an all-in-one unit which lives normally outside of your living space. So if you're overlanding, it will normally be outside your vehicle, or if you're camping, it will be outside your tent. In addition to safety, the chances of you getting carbon monoxide poisoning from this unit is quite slim because, as I say, it normally lives outside of your living space. And as long as you use common sense to not point the exhaust close to your intake, then the chances of you inhaling your exhaust is quite slim. Unlike an electric blanket or a propane heater, which is more of a direct heat, which means that you got to be within close vicinity of the actual heater. A diesel heater blows hot, dry air, which means that it heats up the airspace that you're in. For example, the entire tent or your entire vehicle, or even your garage or your shed. If you want to work in it during winter, then this unit is suitable for it. So let's talk about this particular diesel heater from Hcalory. The model is XMZ-D1. On paper, it says that the heating power of this unit is between 5 and 8 kilowatts. It is portable, it's an all-in-one unit. The top half of it is the fuel tank, which takes diesel from this cap here, and the bottom part is the actual heating unit. It's got a remote control and a front LCD display. It runs off 12 volts and 24 volts. This unit is quite efficient as well. Depending on your power setting, it consumes anywhere between 0.1 and 0.45 liters per hour of diesel. The power cable just terminated with a positive and a negative. So I ended up putting a cigarette lighter socket at the end of it, because obviously a cigarette lighter socket is quite common, so I can use it in different vehicles, or I can use it in my lithium battery packs. On the side here, there's a couple of slots wherein you can physically see the level of your diesel fuel, which I find quite useful. At the back here is where the air gets sucked in, then gets converted into hot air and comes out from the front here, which does come with its own short flexible hose. I bought myself one of those flexible ducting hoses. So with that, I've got a little bit of length between the unit if I leave it outside and in my vehicle or the tent. Right at the bottom of the unit is your intake and exhaust pipes, and they come with their respective hoses. Obviously your exhaust with the muffler, and also this flexible pipe for your intake, which does come with a little filter at the end of it. The filter is just made out of nylon mesh. A lot of people change it to a bit of foam to give it more filterage, and I think that will be a good idea, which I'll definitely do in the future. So let's talk about my first experience using a diesel heater. See, I've been following diesel heaters for probably 2 or 3 years now, but just never had a chance to buy one. So prior to Hcalory sending me this unit, I kind of knew quite a lot about these heaters. But I must say, I still got caught up with something, and I'll get to that later. The most common thing that I see people do even before using it is replacing the fuel hose with a stiffer one, because apparently the soft hose that comes with the unit is not good for the type of fuel pump that it has, because I think it can produce a bit of air bubbles or something, and it can spit out an error. So when I bought a cigarette lighter socket, and when I replaced this, I made a decision to proactively buy myself a stiffer hose, open up the unit, and take the opportunity to kind of check it out, see how the thing operates, and just do a general check of the unit. So the first thing I noticed when I opened it up is that the fuel tank wasn't secured at all. When you tighten the fuel cap, the cap itself kind of secures the metal casing and thus keeping the tank in place. But to be honest, it's just not going to cut it, especially if you're going to travel with a bit of diesel in the tank, so it gives it a bit of weight, and you put it in the back of your vehicle with all the corrugations or the rough roads, especially if you're forward driving. I don't think it's a good idea for the tank to just kind of have a little bit of a play within the unit. So I secured the tank onto the actual heater unit with a couple of cable ties. So that sorted the problem for now, and I'll find a better solution later on. There's a couple of screws that hold the mount for the front LED screen, and those screws are quite pointy, and they are literally right next to the tank. And when I move the tank backwards and forwards, the very sharp end of the screw is hitting the tank. So that is definitely going to puncture it. Before you know it, you'll have diesel leaking, and it's not going to be good. So I removed the screws, and I didn't have the suitable replacement for it at the time. So I just put a couple of cable ties just to secure it in place. Now let's go back to the bottom of the unit. And as you can see, the intake and the exhaust pipes are quite low. There's not enough clearance. So they supply you with a couple of extensions for the legs, which gets it up a few inches. However, I find that it's still not sufficient. So I actually ended up putting a couple of pieces of wood underneath to gain a bit more clearance. And it was quite annoying because the exhaust pipe is bendable, but it's made out of thin material. So I had to really bend it to its maximum to be able to clear the bottom of the ground. Especially if you plan to put it on grass, it might ignite some dry grass or leaves, and it might cause fire. Now, what problems did I face when I first started using the unit? Well, I couldn't get it started. I've plugged it into both my EcoFlow River Max and my Allpower's S700 lithium battery packs, and both of them just won't power it. While the EcoFlow was actually better because it did power it, and it started to go through its power up cycle, but it just wouldn't heat up, and it would eventually cut off. With the Allpower's unit that I had, it just literally won't work, and it would just shut off the unit. And one thing I noticed is that with the EcoFlow, it was trying to fire it up, and I could hear a bit of bubbles coming from the exhaust. And I figured that maybe the glow plug wasn't firing up, and diesel was being injected to the unit, but it wasn't burning. So when I took out the exhaust pipe, sure enough, diesel poured out from the unit, and I figured that I don't think there's enough power to actually get the glow plugs running. So I wish that Hcalory would really emphasize that this unit would consume quite a lot of power during the startup process, which makes sense because a glow plug does consume quite a lot of power to get it running, and once it's running, it'll be fine. I really wanted to use my lithium battery packs to power this unit, so I really had to come up with a solution. Well, my solution was to buy an AC to DC converter with a cigarette lighter socket. It was 12.5 amps, and I figured it was more than enough to actually power the unit. And sure enough, plugged it in, and both my lithium battery packs fired up the unit, no problem. Now let's jump on to the performance of this unit. Well, once it was up and running, I was pretty impressed. Hot air came out within a few minutes, and boy, was it really hot. The fan speed worked quite well. At full power, the volume of the hot air that came out of the unit was quite incredible. I could see it heating up this entire garage. And from what I see online, people use it in a space this big with no problems. Well, what do you guys think? Personally, my honest opinion is it's well worth it. I love this unit. Yes, I know it's free. It's been given to me for a review, but if I was to buy it with my own money, it's quite reasonable to buy it. And even though I had to shell out a bit of money on top of it to kind of improve the unit, the performance that I got out of it and the ease of use, I reckon it's well worth it. I'm going to keep this as a portable unit. It does come with a smaller form factor, which I think I might get myself, and maybe I'll remove the heating unit and permanently install it in the Land Rover, which I've seen quite a few people in the UK do, and maybe plumb the fuel line into an external tank underneath the Land Rover or something. I'm really excited for the next winter camp. I know this unit will definitely change things for us. I'll put a link down at the bottom if you want to learn more about it or maybe purchase one. Definitely check it out. Hey, thanks for supporting my channel. As always, give us a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't yet. Don't forget to make a comment down at the bottom and share the video. Catch you in the next one.